just keep holding each other over here. I've got a bike one too, but it's not a formal occasion.
This comes with COVID-19 impregnated in it.
We're on.
Me? Okay.
Okay, so we got everyone who's going to call in, calling in. We may have Member Stevens call in here in a minute. That's okay for us. We'll go ahead and get started. So welcome everyone online and those that are here to our Planning Commission meeting. We are going to start with a word of prayer from Member Mayerly, and then if you would, please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity to gather as a planning commission and hopefully serve the people of Morgan County in these trying times. Whatever glitches that we go through, we offer them up to you, and we hope that you look down in your kindness and guide us tonight. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. For folks online, can you hear us okay? They're all muted,
Yeah,
right? Okay.
we can hear you.
Okay, good. And we can hear you good, so that works out well. So Planning Commission, we're ready for approval of the agenda. If there's no comments, we'll take a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move we approve the agenda.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
A second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so that motion passes. Moving on to item number 4, declaration of conflicts of interest. Anybody on the Planning Commission? Any conflicts with anything on the agenda? That's a no from everybody. So we're going to move on to item number 5, public comment. So for those listening online, if you haven't attended one of these electronic meetings, this is only our second one in the Planning Commission. So at least technology-wise, I feel like we've made some good advancements. But we'll just try and walk you through the things that you can't see. We are going to move on to item number 5. The requirements tonight were if you wanted to have anything said or to say anything yourself for public comment, by 5 p.m. you were supposed to email staff or call in. And we had one letter that was emailed in, and we're going to go ahead and read that for public comment. The letter is from Mr. Lance Prescott, dated May 14, 2020. Says, to whom it may concern, I'm drafting this letter as a second attempt to request that water management regarding the Legacy Hills development be attended to in a responsible manner. I appreciate the time and thought already invested into this project and in hearing my concerns. Recently, I've been in contact with the Morgan County engineer, and I have seen the proposed plans up for review. The most recent set of plans I have seen does not take care of the issue I discussed with the Commission last month. It is my understanding that the Commission is able to approve development and projects with a list of conditions for items that are not complete and are not in the proposed plans. This brings up concerns, as it has been my experience that conditions, in quotes, are uneasily tracked and followed up on. It is not unreasonable to ask the developer to have plans ready and finalized upon submittal. I'm reaching out to the Commission again to gain a better understanding of the process. Questions I have regarding the process and possibilities. Number 1, if approved, how does the county know what the design is for the water to flow from the upper side of the road into Dalton Creek? Number 2, if approved with conditions, who follows up with those conditions, especially if not shown in the plans? How do you know if they will be completed? And number 3, if it is approved, who designs, approves, and ensures that the drainage across the road is sufficient for heavy runoff for spring snowmelt? If these questions are left unanswered, as a citizen of Morgan County, I have bigger concerns for growth than just this development that affects my family's property. I fear as there is more growth in Morgan County, we will see a greater negative impact on the other tax-paying county residents and property owners. Change and growth is inevitable, and we can be very positive and can be a very positive thing for our county. However, we must be responsible in how that change is approached and dealt with. Thank you for the time. Signed, Lance Prescott. That's all we had for public comment. So we've entered that into public comment. We'll go ahead and move out of public comment now. And on to item number 6 on our agenda, which is a legislative discussion with a public hearing and decision for the Warner rezone.
So Robin Casper is applying to amend the zoning map from the A20 and the RR1 zones to the R120 zone on 8.21 acres located in the Mountain Green area just west of Rollins Ranch. And the property consists of 2 parcels, and a single-family home already exists on one of the parcels. The R120 zone allows for half-acre lots and provides areas for very low-density single-family residential neighborhoods. And the requested zone change coincides with the general plan designation of village low-density residential, which allows for 2 units per acre and provides for planned single-family residential communities. So county staff recommends approval of the Warner rezone because it coincides with the general plan and with existing and proposed land uses in the area.
Thanks for that. So does the applicant want to say anything now before? Nobody has entered an intent to speak at public hearing for this. So we'll still have to make a motion to go into public hearing. Is that accurate? No one's called in. So we'll still make a motion to go into that. So if the applicant wants to speak now, we can do that, or we can just quickly do public hearing, come out of public hearing and do it that way.
Well, I think everything you talked about was just what we're concerned, or what we're planning is just to switch to the R120 zoning, and it's the half-acre lots. There are 2 homes on the property now, and a barn, but other than that, everything else is accurate.
Okay. Why don't we do the public hearing thing, and then we'll ask any questions and discussion amongst ourselves. All good? So
Okay.
Someone want to make a motion to go to public hearing?
I move we go into public hearing.
Okay, we have a motion to go in. Do we have a second?
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
There is no public comment, or no public comment for this portion, so now we can make a motion to go out of public hearing.
So moved.
And a second.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
That may seem a little silly to those listening online, but we must go into open to a public hearing, so we did, and we're out of public hearing. We'll just move on to our discussion. Members of the Planning Commission, what questions do you have for each other or staff or the applicant on this application, if any? Okay, that's
I don't have any.
no questions from anybody here? Okay, if not, if you guys are ready for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move we forward a positive recommendation to the County Council for the Warner rezone, application number 20.019, changing the zoning district on 8.21 acres of land from A20 to RR1 and RR1 to R120, based on the findings listed in the staff report dated May 14th, 2020.
Okay, we have a motion to forward a positive recommendation. Do we have a second?
Second.
So we have a second. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
And none opposed. Motion passes. Oh, did Shane come in?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So that was unanimous. Unanimous with Member Wilson absent. Thanks, Shane. Okay, so of course we encourage the applicant to stay on for the rest of the meeting because it's really interesting. You're welcome to listen in.
Okay.
It's hard, yeah. No, of course, you're welcome to. So let's move on to item number 7 on our agenda.
Okay, this is postponed from our April 23rd meeting. This is the Legacy Hills Small Subdivision Preliminary Final Plat. It's three lots. It's off Morgan Valley Drive, just south of the Ridges. And the current zoning is rural residential along the front, along Morgan Valley Drive.
and A20 in the back. They're proposing a 15-acre lot 1, and then lots 2 and 3 are over 20 acres. So that conforms to the zoning requirements. And I'll just show the plat here. There's building envelopes delineated to, there was a geologic hazard study done on the property. And so these are the areas with the building envelopes, are the safe areas that are not steep and are acceptable to build on. There's been, it was postponed, the item was postponed because of concerns over the road. And if you actually, see here, the road is going to go from Morgan Valley Drive up and end in a cul-de-sac. An access easement to the property higher up the hill will begin at that point. But for the subdivision plat, this is the road that's in question and is being used to service the 3 lots.
I thought we postponed it for the water.
Clarification on drainage, right?
Yes, and I'm just saying, so this is the road where we're working on the drainage issues.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and the applicant met with the county engineer. They discussed the concerns brought up by Mr. Prescott that was mentioned in the public comment, and the county engineer recommended approval. He feels that, and they made some design modifications to it in order to address the additional runoff concerns. And just to address the questions brought up in Mr. Prescott's letter at the public comment portion of our meeting. The first question is, if approved, how does the county know what the design is for the water to flow from the upper side of the road into Dalton Creek? That engineering design will be modified and approved before the final plat is signed and recorded. The county engineer will review the applicant's plans and sign that off. This is approved with conditions, and the conditions are that the applicant meet sorry about that, Brent, I gotta mute your mic. They're picking up a lot of noise. I think it's you. So the second question is, if approved with conditions. The condition is that they meet all the engineering, surveying, and geologic requirements that are outlined in the separate memorandums. And so we have that updated memorandum from the county engineer, and it states that they have reviewed the revised drainage plans for Legacy Hills to determine compliance with Morgan County standards and the previous review comments. The drainage design has been modified to comply with the previous concern about drainage calculations and retention capacity. A drainage swell for diverting most of the potential runoff to Dalton Creek has been added to the design. The retention basin appears to have sufficient capacity for runoff volume from the paved roadway. During our meeting to discuss the addition of the drainage swell, we indicated that the turnaround should be graded so that the runoff from the east side of the private drive flows into the drainage swell. This is our understanding that the developer agreed to this condition. However, the design drawing showing the grading at the turnaround is ambiguous. This is likely a drawing issue that can be easily resolved. We recommend approval of the design drawings with the condition that the final drawing clearly show the agreed upon drainage pattern. The required drainage pattern, if the private drive becomes a paved road in the future, a culvert will probably be needed at this location. So county engineer is saying that there is an easy design solution and that they recommend approval. We are covered by their conditions, and the applicant will have to meet those. And that, I believe, addresses the questions for item 2. And basically, who designs and who approves is and ensures compliance is the developer designs. Our county engineer reviews and makes sure that is done correctly, and then reviews the design in the field as well. So that's how the process is handled. And using engineering calculations to meet these drainage flows.
So could we also say, if they're not complied, they don't get a building permit?
Well, it would even be before that because we wouldn't sign off on the final plat until we have approved design plans. And then they probably, we would,
That's just a guarantee for lands that they
Yeah.
can't do anything until the drainage is
Correct.
compliant with the engineer.
But it wouldn't, you couldn't even record the plat without the engineer signing off on it.
right, we'd have the correct design for the final plat. I think we have a little flexibility on whether it's all completed prior to issuing a building permit, but certainly before they get too far down the road, they would have to have those improvements in place. So, and that's how we've operated on the lot items. Any other questions for staff? I'm sure the applicant would like to speak. I'll unmute him, sorry. Maybe.
Yes, I have no problem putting in that culvert, Lance, running the water from the east side of the private drive or private driveway over to that drainage swell. It might as well be in now because eventually that driveway will be paved. So I believe this covers all of the neighbors' concerns about the storm drain.
Okay. Anybody on the planning commission have questions for the applicant? Any questions for staff? Any discussion amongst ourselves?
I do have like one quick one. So the last thing on this note here, it's kind of a future thing. So if private drive becomes paved road in the future, we can't put that as a condition, correct? For just the very last sentence, well, second to last sentence of that paragraph.
Mr. Prescott's letter?
Yeah, not Mr. Prescott's
No,
letter, Mr.
the engineering letter.
I'm not even gonna try this one. Biergard. Thank you. If the private drive becomes a paved road in the future, in other words, this isn't actually part of the application, so we should not consider that.
And I think that's why he's worded it this way, but that's what Brent was talking about. He's gonna go ahead and do it now.
Okay.
That future drive's not too far off, and while he's doing the road, it'd be a good time to do it.
Okay, so we should just put that in as a condition anyway.
Well, it's kind of covered in the condition that they'll meet the engineering comments and
Okay.
memo, so.
Yeah, 'cause the
I
end-
don't think we need an additional condition because it's addressed here, but you could if you want to get really specific.
Okay.
It's up to you.
What do you guys think? Anybody have any comments on that?
No,
Sounds good.
Leave it as is, or do you want to put an addition?
no, I think the one condition covers it all.
Okay. Okay, if there's any other discussion, we'll take a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the Legacy Hills Small Subdivision Preliminary and Final Plat, application 20.013, allowing for a 3-lot subdivision of land located approximately 2791 North Morgan Valley Drive, based on the findings and with the conditions listed in the staff report dated April 20,
It's the same.
dated May 14th, 2020.
Okay. You're supposed to kiss.
Thanks for that, yep. Okay, so we have a motion, second for the motion?
I second?
Motion and a second, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Got it. Motion passes. Okay, on to item number 8.
We have been discussing and for a long time the need to do a service agreement code amendment. Currently in our subdivision ordinance, the requirement is that the utility company provides a service agreement, I believe a preliminary plat. Is that correct? So, yes, a preliminary plat requirement. And there's some vagueness and ambiguity about what exactly is a will serve letter, what should it include. And so we wanted to have a discussion with you and see if there's an opportunity to clarify in the code. And Haley put this together. Bailey also did a lot of research on this as well, looking at other codes and other jurisdictions. I think my personal vision, having worked with it a little bit, I'll just say, is that we ought to have a standard that, and it's in the code now. I just think there's room for improvement because it keeps coming up as an issue. So at concept plan, we have a clear direction of a statement of, yes, it's in a water district, or it will be through the, it's a well and septic system or something like that. But it is possible. And then at preliminary, we have a more specific set of standards and a letter from a utility company, for example, that actually says, yes, we plan to provide it. Maybe there's conditions with that, maybe there isn't, but that is their plan. And then before the final plat is submitted for acceptance, that we actually have a service agreement that's signed, and at that point, the utility company is signing off and saying, yes, we are fully going to do this, and if they need payments or drawings or anything that they need from the developer will have to be handled by them from that point forward, and that they're signing off that they're going to guarantee their service. And I don't know, that's kind of the direction I'd like to go. And what we have is just some different examples of different counties and jurisdictions and what they have.
I'll say this right away, we're clearly out of sync with the surrounding counties in what we require.
Yeah.
And it's definitely been an issue for us, trying to get a handle on what will serve actually means.
Is part of the issue that we usually see preliminary and final at the same time?
I don't think that that's been the problem so much, because we do that for small subdivisions, but I can't say that that's been an issue. If they are submitting preliminary and final, they'd have to have the higher requirement. There's no question about that they would have to meet the final plat standard, not the preliminary. But maybe that is part of the problem.
So for Summit and Weber, is this at concept or preliminary for that first part? Both Summit and Weber counties require a written statement.
It's under preliminary requirements.
Yeah.
Yes, is that preliminary? Yeah, well, it's just a written statement of preliminary.
It's still a lot more comprehensive than what we have.
And to me, that's kind of what I was saying, is that, okay, at preliminary, you've identified that this is where it will come from. You don't necessarily have the signed agreement yet, and the criteria established, but it's something that's definitely going to happen. I don't know.
So
What's the problem with Morgan Cities?
I don't think there is a problem.
So you're saying at preliminary, it's more of a letter of intent to serve and not an actual will serve?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's what they're doing in these.
I guess
it's
it
just
depends on the
specifically,
county,
Summit
right?
County requires a letter of intent.
Wasatch County clearly addresses the service agreement requirements while still having specific all-encompassing requirements. They're talking about a utility plan showing existing and proposed infrastructure.
Haven't we been using a will serve as basically a letter of intent, kind of?
Kind of.
Okay. I think that's the problem,
Yeah.
kind of.
I think there's
So
inconsistency
really,
with how we define it.
so what is the definition of a will serve letter? We will serve you,
I think
right?
that's what,
Is it a signed contract?
It's what our
or
code
is it a letter
says.
of intent?
that's what we need to decide.
That's what I need to figure out, yeah.
Or call it?
I think, well, the service agreement is our language, it's in our code, and to me, that's an agreement. It's not we plan to agree.
So I would say that a will serve would be at preliminary and a agreement would be at
A signed
final.
agreement at final.
So if you're using will serve and letter of intent interchangeably?
Yeah.
So what do we require a concept then? Just capacity?
You have to identify your sources. Just identify them, it says.
That's where-
Whether it's going to be
Well,
wells
but what
or...
if I'm in Cottonwood and then I try to hook up and they say no, but I got approved because I would fall under them during concept.
But then you have approval. A platted subdivision already has approval.
At concept, you would just say that I'm in the Cottonwood Mutual Water Association boundaries.
Okay,
And by being in their boundaries, I'm
That's
in
it.
their service district.
okay.
And so for a concept, that's good enough for a concept level. Very low level is concept. So,
Okay.
Carbon is very comprehensive.
Wow.
Yeah, that's,
So why can't we just do that? Why can't we say at concept, like, you need to be in a district, or at least in the boundaries? At preliminary, you need a letter of intent, and at final, you need a signed service agreement.
and that's what we're talking about.
Well, isn't it that simple?
I think so.
Or is it more complex than that?
Well, I think it is that simple conceptually, and I think the details of what exactly is in a letter of intent and defining that. And that's
So-
exactly why I put this on tonight, to have this discussion, is to hear your thoughts on that exact thing. Is that the right direction to go? All right, now we can start digging into the details and coming up with that specific language for letter of intent, will serve.
I think our code for concept is good. It just says you need to identify the sources.
Okay, is that enough?
Yeah, I think for concept it is.
Okay.
It's whether you're in a culinary system or you're going to do wells and septic, or you part of a sewer district. I think it just says identify. For concept, that,
Okay.
thinking.
If the utility providers, like the water districts or sewer districts, are having issues with capacity or, ability to serve, would the county council put a moratorium on building until they can get that straightened out? Or is this going to fall back to us, say that, hey, we're in XYZ water district, but there isn't a moratorium against them, but they don't have sufficient capacity to go forward at this point? In other words, we just kind of cut out any check and balance that we had on looking at it.
So if we go with what we're kind of discussing, at concept plan, that would be, even if they didn't have capacity,
They would still go forward.
That would still be an approvable standard for concept. It would shut down preliminary.
So in order to get a will serve, they have to show capacity. In
Oh,
order
yeah.
for my company to give you a will serve, I have to prove that I have that capacity to do that.
And I think that's one of the criteria we would put into the will serve letter, needs to identify that you have sufficient capacity
And the ability to deliver.
and
Deliver
the
it.
ability to deliver it.
Or receive
We actually
it, whether it's
require
sewer.
that documentation from the utility company.
We were getting more and more like conditional will serves, where the conditions,
Yep.
I don't want to say that they were unattainable, but if any of those conditions fell through, the will serve definitely wasn't worth anything. So I think we do need to be very, very careful on what conditions we will allow. I don't know if we can delineate them in a regulation, but give us wide discretion to review and revoke any of those conditions, or to say, you got to take care of this first before we go forward.
What's the difference between what you just explained, besides an actual signature, and what would be accepted at final? Because you just said that the water company has capacity and can get it to the place.
Well, I think those would be criteria for the will serve letter. So they would give us a letter that says, yes, I can serve that development. I have sufficient capacity and the infrastructure is in place or will be in place shortly.
So what's the difference between that and an actual service agreement besides a signature?
I don't think there would be. I think we're identifying criteria for the service agreement / will serve letter. And again, now we're interchanging these terms, I think, as part of the confusion. To me, a service agreement is a will serve letter. But a letter of intent of, yeah, we can, is not the same level. Our code uses service agreement. I think that's interchangeable with, we will service this development, or a will serve letter.
Right.
Thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to find a hard definition online of will serve letter, but the ones that I'm looking at outline conditions of the service to a particular parcel, the district's conditional commitment to serve new customers, et cetera. So I think at concept, it's just about capacity, right? We agree we do have capacity.
No, at concept, it's just we're in a district.
Yeah.
Or we're gonna drill wells.
This is the plan. We will have a well and septic. You know, and
Or we're gonna hope to.
We're in XYZ district. That's all the
The
concept.
confusion I've seen is that preliminary final where they produce a letter that says we have capacity and there's no more, there's nothing else there. Not the ability to deliver, you know what I mean? I think that's where I see the problem is that applicants come at preliminary or preliminary and final together and they say, I have a will serve letter, which is really just a letter of capacity. And it doesn't, even address the fact that, by the way, you can't even get it there. We can't get water there.
When you say letter of capacity, do you mean letter of intent?
Letter of intent? No, I'm going back to my time on the Mountain Green Sewer Improvement District, and really it just comes down to capacity. We have capacity to serve this many ERUs, they call them, residential units. So when they issued will serve, it was just basically saying, yeah, we have enough capacity, we're not at our limit yet. And there's really no further discussion as to how the sewer was going to get there or anything. That was never part of the will serve. And I think, and a lot of times we see that with water districts as well. They give a letter saying that we have the capacity to serve you, but there's nothing else in that will serve. There's nothing else like some of these other things we see as how it's going to get there. Do we need a lift station to remove waste and pump it up into the infrastructure? None of that is addressed at will serve. It's just typically it's just been capacity. We have the capacity to do it. So I think we need those details.
So the will serve / service agreement, the conditions would be that they have the capacity and they can get it there.
And they will.
And they will.
And they will.
That's will serve.
And the letter of intent is...
At preliminary, would say, we intend to serve this subdivision. I guess. I don't know.
And at preliminary, perhaps that's where we address the capacity question. 'Cause we're
Right.
moving, that's a big step. Concept, I'm not too worried about, but at preliminary, you're doing design, you're spending a lot. It's
You become vested.
Real money, so to speak.
Yeah, you become vested.
So maybe the letter of intent is showing capacity and the service agreement is we will get it there.
Well, and just kind of listening to you guys talk, the way I would interpret what you're saying is, the will serve is a capacity statement's not enough. It needs to, the will serve needs to say, here's our, we do have the water or whatever. We do have the ability to serve, and this is the design of how it's going to be served, and this is who's going to do that work in order to make sure it is served. And that is written into an agreement, and it's between the utility company and the developer.
So why don't we just get rid of a letter of intent and say you have to have it all ready by preliminary?
That's kind of what we've been doing, or thought we were.
Yeah, because really whatever they produce at concept is...
Or preliminary, yeah.
No, I'm going back to concept. What we have been accepting at concept is
Nothing.
nothing, really.
Well, it's just a statement of.
It's just a statement of, yeah, I'm in the district or.
Yeah, 'cause
Well, that's what the code requires.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, and that's why we've been following the code, but.
Yeah, we have.
I think not everybody's comfortable with that.
No, because part of it is because we're answering a lot of questions at concept. The public doesn't understand that they don't have, our code doesn't require them to have that figured out yet. It's too much of a financial burden if concept isn't even approved. So back to what you were saying, maybe, I don't know, what do we say at concept then? What verbiage do we use at concept?
But
Or
they,
just leave it, it says availability and location of utilities and drainage facilities
So just leave it
existing
as
and
is.
proposed within the development. That's,
Well, you want to
That's
throw
what
in
it says.
capacity there? I kind of hear that.
It's a question we get every single time. Why would you approve concept? There's clearly no capacity
Exactly.
to do that.
And it wouldn't
Rarely
be-
for sewer, but
It
sometimes
wouldn't
for
be a
sewer.
hard, the problem with the capacity statement is now that utility, let's say they have 100 units of whatever they're doing, if they commit at concept plan to give it to this guy, now it's spent, so to speak.
Yeah.
And then.
It ties their
and then
hands.
it
They
never
would-
goes
that.
forward, and then already got that promise out there.
Yeah,
That's
they may
the
have to drill a
problem
well or
with
something
it.
like
Yeah.
that. If
I
they-
don't agree, I don't want it to be at concept.
I think.
Because what if the race is on, is kind of what it is.
Yep. And they may not go forward from concept, like you say, if the utility has committed so many hookups, so they withhold it from another development, and this concept never moves forward.
We couldn't put limits on that, right? We couldn't put in like an expiration date, that would, because that's between the
Oh.
utility company.
Yeah.
I actually,
Expiration date of will serves?
I think there ought to be expiration date on all this. I
Well,
mean,
there-
obviously, you're not gonna change it at concept of, oh, you're no longer in the district. But if they're committing resources, there ought to be an expiration date on it.
And there is. So
An
for
expiration
sewer,
date.
there is.
But I think that,
For preliminary
now
to
we're
go
running
through?
the utility companies is my problem when we
Yeah.
do that. We're saying the utility company, you have to have an expiration date. It's up to them.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's
So I guess
hard.
that's a no
Well,
on.
the expiration date's kind of the expiration for preliminary.
Yeah, it's the
Till
same-
final.
same
You
thing,
have
right.
deadlines under our code to get final and get it recorded, so that's kind of your,
We already do?
Uh-huh.
What are
Yeah.
those?
1 year.
I want to say 6 months from concept, the preliminary.
Or a
has to be
year.
Filed within,
a year, and then you get an extension.
yeah. So concept to preliminary, you've got a year, you can get a 1-year extension. Preliminary to final, you've got a year,
Year.
1-year extension.
From the
And
time that it
final-
goes here, or the time that they turn in their application?
From the time
Application.
it's approved. Time of approval. And then the final plat expires in 6 months.
So preliminary to final,
Is a year
Is a
with possible
year.
extension. So it could be 2 years.
and then after the final, then what expires in 6 months?
The final.
The final
It's not
approval, you have to get it recorded.
So recording has to happen
Mm-hmm.
in 6 months.
Yeah, and that's kind of up to the
Didn't we
applicant.
didn't we
Yeah.
run into a problem like that or something? Where they didn't get it recorded in time?
That's happened several times. Whisper Ridge has had to
Yeah.
deal with that. Was phase 2 of Whisper Ridge.
And then we had that Woodland Hills ran out of, they didn't get final.
Who came to us
Shady
in December?
What?
Shady Creek.
Shady Creek, that's
Shady
what it
Creek.
is. It was Shady Creek, not Woodland Hills, yeah.
Yeah, Shady Creek came to us the week before.
Their
The
deadline.
deadline, yeah.
And I'm not advocating for anybody, but it is a lot of work to do all this stuff to develop property. And it can be a lot of money. So that's why we have these stages and don't require it all up front. They could move through it a lot faster if they have the time and the resources, but we allow them to work through this process and balance it out. So.
Here is what I would like to see. I would like to see will serves at preliminary. And then we don't have to worry about it, and they don't have to worry about it either.
Yeah.
But I think we need some
What a will serve is,
resolution on what a will serve is, yeah.
maybe staff can come up with definitions or something for us to work with.
Well, we can come up with criteria and definitions.
I thought we just did. I thought that it was,
Well,
Capacity
but in more
and-
specific language,
Yeah.
but
oh,
He's saying
Fancy
he'll give us a
language.
deliverable. We
Well,
can-
Code language.
code language. Yeah, I don't do code language. Okay.
I don't know why it takes so long.
That's a good one. I think that makes sense. We've struggled with this.
And just the interesting thing, when I was reading our requirements for the minor subdivision, the one you can do without platting, the one lot on 100 acres, you're required to put in a sprinkler system on a minor subdivision. That's the first time I've read that. We don't require sprinklers anywhere else. You have to meet the fire code and the wildland urban interface code, including automatic extinguishing sprinkler system design approval.
Is that because of the risk of the fire department being able to reach?
But the 1 acre lot could be on a road, on a county road, so I just found that interesting, that we don't require sprinklers. The fire marshal might in certain areas, in that interface area, but
What does interface area?
it's
The transition
between,
ME 160.
well, where you're kind of okay, that you don't have problems with wildland fires,
No.
like the valley floor. But up along our benches, that's usually in the interface area. No, I just,
Make a note of it and add it to our work list.
well, that's just interesting, yeah.
Okay, so are we good with moving forward on the code, on the will serve discussion? You got, yeah?
Yeah, I'm good.
Yep.
And that's exactly what I told him for.
Okay. Shane, do you have anything?
He's having a nap.
He's having a nap?
No, I'm good. Oh, I'm good.
Okay, thanks. So let's go to our discussion on cemetery land use.
So I've had a few phone calls, we've had a few phone calls in the last couple months about people wanting to do cemeteries on their private lots, for a private cemetery. And we really, it's not addressed in the code. I know there's a lot of history there before I got here, so I don't want to go and stir up a bunch of mess, but I think we ought to address it in our land use code on residential properties for sure. Just some sort of standard. And kind of curious if you guys, what your thoughts are with everything that happened, I want to say in 2015, 16.
Which was?
Oh, that was crematorium, right?
Yes.
So, and like I said, I wasn't here for that.
I'm remembering it all now, yeah.
So,
Yeah, but different issue. I mean, we're talking about mitigating smells versus having
How big
relatives
of a lot?
buried in your backyard.
How big of a lot?
well,
That's-
and that's,
We have
Saying-
nothing right now. It's basically an open-ended discussion. What do we do? So you've had people request to say, hey, I want to put a cemetery in my backyard
yeah,
or somewhere on my property.
yeah. I got the
And-
impression it was like a 20-acre lot, but yeah.
Okay, so we have no code. It's kind of like,
Well, it's not an allowed use, but it's not excluded either.
right,
I mean, technically, it's not allowed, it's not listed as an allowed use, so we don't do it, but state code allows you to do it as long as you record a plat, or record it somehow. So, so do we want to address it? Do we, to be safe, hey, if you want to do a private cemetery up to, and I don't know the right term, 10 lots, I'll just call them that, how about that? To 10 burial lots.
Plots.
Plots, thank you. That is allowed in residential use.
In a half acre.
There's no height limit. So, on how many acres and all that, maybe that's fine, but we ought to put a standard in there that this is allowed and anything else isn't.
never in my life has this thought ever crossed my mind. It's the first for me.
Honestly, I say the same.
I think that if it is gonna be a thing, that it should be 10 acres plus.
Oh, very good.
I'm just sitting
I have no
on-
starting point,
Yeah,
so.
I don't, I think our code should mirror the Utah State Code,
Maybe.
plus add whatever we want in the zones or the size.
Yeah,
But-
maybe it just references must meet state guidelines or
Yeah,
something like that.
that's what I mean.
But in the
Just,
state guidelines, it's just.
What are those?
it's in here.
There's not a lot here.
In the
We should have
packet?
It's in the packet,
Oh, Utah code.
the
No,
Utah
really,
code.
From neighboring lots?
Not a lot of easements.
Yeah.
You know, to only allow them in certain zones, is like what,
Except we have cemeteries in RR1 now. We have a Richville and the Enterprise.
But are
Are
they
in 1 acre.
grandfathered in before they?
Right, no, but they're just in 1 acre zone. I'm just,
So maybe the use is personal cemetery on private property,
as,
and here's the standards.
right,
A cemetery, or you're
a
actually.
community, yeah.
A community cemetery, and that's defined as these things. And like churches, you can put it anywhere, but it's a conditional use and it needs to be looked at and examined.
And maybe setbacks need to be, I mean,
Oh, that's what Chris is just bringing up.
yeah.
Yeah, I think it
The
is
setbacks, that's a big issue.
I saw the movie Poltergeist, I know what's going on.
Yeah,
So it's conditional use.
No,
In
it's like a
Wasatch.
acre and a half, maybe.
Cash. Permitted in Duchesne. Conditional in Box Elder. So I would say definitely it's a conditional use, right?
conditional.
And we need to, I think we need to think about what zones, I mean, I don't know, this sounds, it's kind of a weird discussion, but I mean, if I'm buying a house on a half-acre lot, and I don't look at the plat because I'm just going through a realtor, and then I'm closing, and at closing, they say, oh, by the way, did you know there's 10 caskets in your backyard?
Oh my gosh.
Well, the monastery in
I mean, that could
Huntsville,
happen, right? I mean, that would be unusual. I don't know if I'd go through the purchase.
the monastery in Huntsville, when they sold, part of the conditions were that the developer would set aside some land as a cemetery for the brothers who were up there, and that would be maintained. So, I mean, if you're selling it, you could always split it off, I guess, as part of a sale. I mean, might be difficult.
That's where the acreage
Well,
comes in.
I feel like if someone wants to put a cemetery in their property, they're not selling. Like, it's a family for life. We're gonna die here.
But who knows?
You also
right?
don't know. Yeah, that's right.
It almost should be 20 acres. I mean,
Well, in Morgan though, that's totally conceivable. I mean, we've got a lot of people like that.
That might be their intent.
so you can
I don't know.
increase the setbacks, be on 20 acres so you have room to move it away from the,
Not the Richville, but the Milton Cemetery, that one's 20 acres.
yeah.
The South Morgan Cemetery is 10, but the Enterprise is probably only like,
An acre. It's not very big, the Enterprise one isn't. And the
No.
Richville isn't big.
Well, but those are all public cemeteries.
Well, yeah, community.
Look, Duchesne's got it permitted in A10, A5, commercial, industrial.
2 acres in Enterprise.
Maybe we make it,
But it's Duchesne.
Industrial? That's
Mm.
interesting.
yeah. Well, they're probably, yeah, bury them in cement, like.
Yeah.
Jimmy Hoffa.
Convenient.
Maybe, what if we made it, I still think it should be conditional. I don't know if it should be permitted. I think we'd like to, no, I'm
I
just.
like it- I
I'm
think
just throwing it out
conditional.
there. But maybe it's kind of the same thing. It would be
Across the board conditional?
What do you mean across the board?
No, I think I think it should be
Every zone?
prohibited in anything.
No, you're talking community cemetery
No, I'm talking about people putting people in their
Private.
Private.
So, yeah, okay, private.
I think it should be prohibited in residential zones. Maybe R120, R1 and below, maybe, I don't know.
Or maybe it's A20 and larger.
I vote
A20
A20 and
A160,
larger.
I vote A22.
F1, a private cemetery.
RR10. 10's pretty big.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Could you, so just after the selling the house comment, could we make them separate it so it's different? Like, so if they were selling the house, they would be selling the house and the property, but not their family cemetery?
Well, okay.
But they have to meet,
And Chris kind of brought that up too, but I don't want to have to do a subdivision for the burial plot that's left in the back corner, and now what does that become in the future? How's
You
that
can-
maintained? What, that just,
They could always exhume,
that seems complicated.
they could always exhume the bodies
Oh, gosh.
and move them.
To where though? If the family didn't take them from their own personal cemetery, where are these caskets gonna go?
Imagine blue stakes coming out.
How about we just say no?
Well,
But I think,
that's okay.
I think conditional, I think,
I think in larger, I mean, who knows how many bodies you got on your property, right? You don't,
Yeah.
the 1800s.
Okay.
I think regardless, they need to be clearly
Yeah, I mean,
marked,
there's-
as like one of the
who cares? I
conditions.
mean,
Well, that's state law
And
requires.
fence.
That has to,
Right. State law requires that it be clearly identified.
right.
okay.
So
How?
And it'd be
how?
platted.
that is, that box is
It's
checked.
recorded.
On the plat and also clearly identifiable from the ground?
You have to record it.
Plat and-
You never know.
Okay.
And then you can require like fencing.
I think, I think we
So
should
you
require
know
fencing.
that-
Right,
Well, if it was conditional, then we have standards that we could apply.
Right.
We have a fence standard we could apply, right?
Yes.
So we wouldn't have to get too specific.
Are we gonna require, like, that 20 acres has 10 plots? Or 20 acres has as many as you can fit in your 20 acres?
They bury them vertically in England because they're out of room, so you could have
you can stack.
stack.
Japan, you're buried for a while, then they take you out because they have to free it up for the next wave
The
of
next
people.
person.
Yeah.
And would this be for mausoleums too?
What's a mausoleum?
See, and I don't know, but that would be another level, I would.
It's the same.
A lot
Like
of
a-
the codes had cemeteries and mausoleums.
Together.
as one, yeah.
What's a mausoleum?
It's that building
A
that,
building that
But
they have shelving?
almost like a temple for,
right.
but not a temple.
But I don't know if you could loosely define
above
burying
ground, yeah.
ashes in a container as, because people put ashes in a mausoleum, don't they? Is it just bodies?
Yeah, I mean, the ashes thing gets weird because you could have ashes in an urn on your fireplace if you wanted. And I don't think you're violating any, I think the reason we do health department is because of questions of sanitation, disease and whatnot, whereas if a person's been cremated, you don't have to worry about that.
I
Shane-
don't know
Shane-
what mausoleum.
Yeah, well, I want to hear what Shane has to
I wanna hear
say.
from Shane.
So what's the main issue with this? Is it because people are wanting to go outside of the cemeteries, or I'm kind of confused?
That's a good question, and that is because people want to do their own burial plots on their private property. And I just didn't know that we don't have any kind of control over it, and I thought it should be something we address for the issues we're talking about.
Yeah, I was always understanding that you couldn't do that you had to go into the public cemeteries, that type of stuff was done away with.
Apparently Utah code says you can do it. But I guess now that we're having the discussion, if I wanted to do this, how would I even know to go to Utah code? Typically people go to the normal code. So maybe as a
Well,
minimum, a pointer.
So, just looking at like with the health code, with Weaver Morgan, you get into the R1 where we're dealing with septics and wells, and that you almost have to have at least an acre and a half, acre and 3/4 to be able to be approved for that. I think if you're going to do it, it needs to be moved out of a residential district. That they need more ground than 1 or 2 acres.
What about RR5?
I'd be fine with just saying that your burial's in the cemetery, that's what they're there for.
And
Except if Milton fills up, then I won't have a place to go.
Well, but then you could always,
We'll make room for you in
Well,
Mountain
it's
Green.
quite large. You'll be
Very.
fine for a while.
Peterson.
We'll make room for you in Mountain Green.
I want to go to my family cemetery.
I don't think Milton's gonna fill up anytime soon.
What about my backyard?
my guess is the Milton Cemetery, it's gonna be a long time before that one's full.
So, just to summarize what we've been saying so far, maybe conditional A20? Conditional A20 not permitted in any other zone.
Well, and I think you could even go smaller than that if you're gonna make it into a public one, but when you're dealing with a private one, that's the issue.
So,
I see.
what zones are cemeteries permitted in right now? Just commercial?
We don't,
Whether,
would,
we don't have a zone for public cemeteries, but it's gotta be a permitted use somewhere.
I
I don't think it's,
Town
double
center?
checking, but
I don't think it's listed.
It's not listed in our residential code, that's,
Hmm.
so I think you're on with it. It's not allowed in smaller than A20. A private cemetery is not allowed in the residential zones. In A20, MU 160, F1, a private cemetery is a conditional use permit. Community or commercial cemeteries are conditional use permits in all zones. Is that what I'm hearing?
No, I don't think in all zones, because, well, no.
We all have churches
It
in all
won't,
zones.
though.
Yeah.
If you do all zones, it won't matter, because if they're gonna do a public one, they're gonna go for, you know,
The
10
whole
acres or
Yeah.
so, or it's gonna be pointless to do it.
Right,
Yeah, that's true. How about we start there?
Yeah.
okay. Then we-
In any of your research, did you find any counties that prohibited
Yeah, there's-
cemeteries, private,
In certain zones,
just in certain zones, but never?
it never like specifically said.
Okay.
I'm really surprised how many people
How,
have
how
gotten this
many?
listed.
How
I had
many
2 separate calls, and then the health department called and said, we're getting calls
in the last,
from last month.
oh, wow.
Huh.
Before that?
It's because
no.
the coronavirus.
And the people weren't related? It wasn't 2 calls
Never
about
make
the
that
same?
assumption up here.
Oh.
So do you feel like you have enough direction moving forward?
Yes, I do.
Sounds good. All right, that was interesting. Let's go on to 10, business staff questions.
Yes, we have, for the May 28th Planning Commission meeting, we have one rezone future land use map amendment request that we're trying to get in for that. And we'd like to do another kind of work session discussion on the commercial use zones. And I did, you know, kind of their purposes and what our overall game plan is with those. I thought we were, when I came here, we had just added the zones, and that, but I've been told that actually some of those are supposed to then go away.
We don't really need to have a work session, that's accurate. They were supposed to go away.
Well, I think that's a lot of complicated issues. And then we ought to look again at the commercial use table. We looked it up today, the 2016 draft had 592 pages. I think we maybe swung that pendulum a little too small.
We were there.
And, yeah, well, and I just, and so there's been some uses that come up, it's like, that doesn't.
2014
quite
to
fit.
2016 is the time frame. It was an
It's a lot of work.
almost 2 years.
Anyway, so, I just thought we ought to revisit that and say there's some uses, I mean, maybe we shrunk it a little too much and.
Just as an agenda item?
Just as what?
Just as an agenda discussion
A
item?
discussion item.
Okay,
Yeah. And then we discuss it and then you guys give us direction, so.
okay.
And maybe we like it exactly the way it is. So.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's really, we're just talking, for the most part, we're just talking Mountain Green, and those zones have
Right.
kind of already been
A
planned.
little bit in Peterson,
planned
but mainly
out.
Mountain Green.
Yeah. Okay.
The other item I was gonna bring up is just, we had, there's some property at about 10, I wanna say it's 1028 Old Highway Road, just outside of Morgan City. There are some 1 and 2 acre lots along Morgan Valley Drive. You can see where the tunnel zoning went in, and so about half of those lots, this is on the north side of, I said Morgan Valley Drive, I meant Old Highway. on the north side of Old Highway, there's 1 and 2 acre lots. The RR1 goes about halfway between them, and then the rest of those lots, just an acre if that, is zone MU 160. Makes them really non-conforming and difficult to use. And I kind of, in looking at the land use map for it, it was just, it doesn't seem like it was, they just followed the zoning and didn't think about the parcels underneath. And I wondered if it was something that you guys would consider directing staff to just initiate a future land use map amendment and a rezone of those properties, so that, you know, it's really 1 and 2 acre lot residential and they could be used as such. The problem with the MU 160 is that the zoning setbacks are so restrictive they can't do anything with it. And it just ends up sitting there, and, you know, I guess you can have your horse on it or whatever. But
Looking at the map, it looks like it was an error when we drafted the future land use map. Like, we went back, what, 200-300 feet from the road and didn't really consider that it was MU 160, because most of the time it's A20 back there, right?
well, in the MU 160, yeah. The MU 160 behind, I mean, there's a very large parcel behind it.
It is, but it's so restricted, like you said, it's so restrictive that it's not like they can put other homes on there anyway, if they just can't put can't even put a shed back there.
Yeah.
Usually it goes from RR1 to A20,
Right.
then MU 160, yeah.
Well, we have, over on this side, it does do the transition to
Yeah.
160. Just so you can see, this is the area we're talking about. And the back half of these lots is just that little sliver. And the future land use map follows that sliver. So it's also, it shows natural resources and recreation on these 1 and 2 acre lots. Well, that doesn't make any sense. So I wondered if there was something that you'd be comfortable with directing staff to go ahead and initiate that future land use map amendment and rezone. We would have to contact these property owners, send them all a letter and tell them what we're doing, and then 1,000-foot radius, notice it, but I only see benefit for these homeowners. I don't see any negative. I don't see any negative to the rest of the community. The RR1 zoning goes up here like this on these 2 parcels, but for some reason these are left off.
Where is that?
Right before Patterson.
Right.
Yeah,
Old Highway,
right before he
Morgan
called.
city limits.
Hidden Hollow, yeah.
Yeah, just before Hidden Hollow. I mean, those go much further back in, so.
It almost looks to me like it was just an error in mapping, but I don't know.
I can look in to see if we can make that call and check the history on it and just say, well, actually that line, it follows the tunnel zoning. I kind of feel that the tunnel zoning comes back 200 feet from the center line of the road. That's about right.
Okay.
And so that's what happened, but I don't think the MU 160 is correct to have on those 1 acre lots, 1 and 2 acre lots.
No, because they're basically makes them useless, and they can't do anything with their land.
They can't do anything in the back half because it's so, because the setbacks are so restricted. And it's a steep area. I don't think there's a lot we could do with it anyway, but.
But right now, they can't do anything. They couldn't put
Yeah.
a
And for the homeowner
shed
that wants
or-
to put an accessory building back in the MU 160, now they've got to come in and pay almost $1,000 to rezone that area to go through this process. And that seems not very fair.
But if we direct you to do it, then that alleviates the burden from them, and
That is correct.
I say we do it. Comments?
Jim, I'm
Same.
fine.
Thank you.
Please. Anything else? No?
No, I don't think so.
Bailey, did you get inputs?
I did.
Okay, if there's no other questions on our notes from the last meeting, someone want to make a motion to approve?
I move to approve the minutes.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Shane?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Taken. Haley, you're faster.
Well, that ended quickly, didn't it? Good hearing you, Shane.
Hey, thank you.
See you later.
Good night.
Bye. almost a record. That was a lot of discussion too for
That quick a
An
time.
hour?
that quick a
Yep.
time.
We got right to the point, no dilly-dally.
Nice. Thanks for your counsel.